Hey YouTube, CDog2233 here with another video on my 2008 Subaru Legacy. And on this one, we're going to be installing the JDM Dash kit into it. For people who are viewing this video, you probably have already found online that there is no US version for mounting a dash kit into the 2008 Subaru Legacy. So there's already a couple videos out there, but none of them are on the 2008 specifically, and they don't address everything. So for this install, I picked up the new Pioneer NEX stereo line, which has a pretty aggressive back end on the stereo here. As you can see, it's got just an insane amount of inputs. You can have My Data Link, Sirius XM. It's got a USB port, steering wheel controls, aux input, mic, GPS input, composite video audio input, 3-4 volt pre-outs. So, and then a backup camera input. I mean, this thing is pretty much just kind of blowing all the other double-din touchscreens out of the water right now. I mean, for $300 you can pick this thing up and it pretty much does it all. Also does Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, so you really don't need to buy the GPS module that goes with it. It's like an additional $300 to get GPS, and then you gotta update it and shit like that. But I recommend just rolling with Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, because then you can access maps through that. So basically, a couple things that no other videos addressed is that the newer Subarus do have an aux input, which does require some additional wiring. So let me just grab all my little harnesses here that I've had to order. As of March 2018, the guy that makes all these custom harnesses is still in business. I was a little worried about that. So let me go through the first harness I ordered from this guy. It's called the I-85 harness. And this is so you can retain your stock auxiliary input. And if you did have an 08 or 09 with the premium sound, you also have the steering wheel controls that will go into this one. So basically what you got to do is you have to tap this into a normal aux input. And basically when you cut an aux cord, I think I have the other end of this one here, you're going to have 3 wires inside of it that you need to match with the 3 wires coming off this harness. Basically, you just got to do a continuity test using a multimeter. Just do an impedance test on the lowest ohm setting to figure out which wires are which, because they're all going to be different. For those of you that don't know the pinout of a 3.5, the very top here is left. The middle one is audio right, and the lowest one here is ground. So you're going to want to match that to this, which I believe red is right, white is left, and black is ground. So you got to solder those to that, and then heat shrink it. And then you can retain the stock input that is in the center console with a custom harness adapter there. Next, we have I absolutely hate this parking brake wire. It just gets tangled in everything because it's painfully long. Okay. Okay. So, starting with this guy, this is basically like an adapter that you would pick up at Best Buy, except it's got a little bit more to it. Basically it retains 2 illumination wires, and I'm not sure if the original ones have the ground or not, but basically you need, this guy on the Subaru Legacy forums has a website where you can order these custom adapters that he makes, where it's got the necessary pinouts for the Japanese HVAC controls, which is from the third custom harness you need to order from this guy, because I cannot find where to buy this male thing. I don't know if he 3D prints them or what, but I've looked everywhere and I cannot find these to make my own because I'd be able to, so I just broke down and paid the guy his ridiculous amount of money. I think it was $50 for like $2 worth of plastic. But basically there's 3 wires coming off the HVAC control here that you need to tap into this 14 pin going out, which is illumination positive, illumination ground, and then switched ignition, the red wire. So as you can see on that, the red's being split 3 ways, and then on the positive illumination wire it's being split 3 ways, and then the illumination ground is just split 1 way. The illumination positive you're only going to use if you actually have an aftermarket head unit that has the orange and white illumination wire, which this harness has pretty much everything you could possibly have on it. So yep, I'll be basically walking through the installation of this disaster of wiring harnesses, because these ones have 4 different plugs on them throughout. You've got the female for the original head unit, you've got the male for your new head unit, you've got the female for your original HVAC controls, which plug into the stock stereo, and then you've got the male for the JDM HVAC controls here. So you basically follow all the wiring instructions, and this is what you end up with. Then if you have steering wheel controls, you would need one of these guys. I don't have the steering wheel controls, I just have the aux input, so this is just to retain my aux input, and this will plug into the aux input on the back of the car. And I did not pick up the JDM hazard switch, so I am going to have to plug that guy in on my own. And then finally, the dash kit you get from Japan also comes with this, which is simply an adapter for your antenna. And then you also need the ground wire for your antenna, which it comes with, which you just want to ground to the body. And then, basically to this point, the instructions are all pretty easy to follow. Hey YouTube, just for reference to begin with, if you want to see how to take the stereo out, please refer to my stereo removal video. But I skipped that part just for the sake of time. As you've probably seen from my other videos, I had a very intense sound system in here already with the stock integration. So I've already got 6 channels of RCA ran to the front, and I was originally using a Rockford Fosgate high-low adapter, and then I also had the iSimple gateway interface harness that added a Bluetooth module and this beast of a cable here to get a 30-pin iPod, and it worked great. I'm just looking to upgrade now. So basically, once you get everything out, depending on how much you're wired for, this will be about where you're at. Now, the next pain in the ass they're going to run into, once you're here and have everything removed, you should be able to find your harnesses. So this one here looks like HVAC, possibly. This one here, possibly aux. I'm not sure which one's which, but one's one and one is the other. I think this bigger one is probably the aux. But it all comes with. Then you got this little ground, which I believe is for the power antenna. Already hooked the power antenna adapter that comes with the dash kit up, just because it's super short and I don't want to forget about it. So yep, and then you can see I have some other wiring here too, which will come into play because I already have a toggle switch that is ground, which I was originally using for my Bluetooth module, because when I would use my auto start, by the time I got in range of the Bluetooth, it had gone into pairing mode. So by having it grounded to this, I could simply just turn the Bluetooth module off and back on, and then it would find my phone. But now, this is going to be the toggle switch for the parking brake bypass that I'm doing. Because since it's ground, all I have to do is simply plug the parking brake bypass into the pre-switch wire, and then I can toggle the parking brake on and off without actually finding where the frickin' wire for this thing is, because I'm not gutting my entire car to figure that out. But the next big pain in the ass, once you're to this point where you've just got all the harnesses free and ready, is you got to cut right here. You want it to be fairly similar to this side, because you need to cut out the hazard switch space for the new head unit. You can either buy a JDM one, or this one will work. It's just going to be, I believe it mounts like this, so you'll have a sideways hazard switch. I tried taking the button off, and it didn't work, and it also won't, you can see it's not perfectly flat, so it won't be perfectly flush. But I think I've pressed my hazard switch like twice in the 2 years I have this car. So it's not worth a $30 replacement. I'll just make it work, but you do need to cut to make space so that the switch can sit here. And a good guide is, this is actually factory cut. Right there, you can actually see cut marks where the factory actually cut this, because they use the same chassis for the JDM and US one, I'm guessing, and then they, at least this little plastic part here must be the same, and then they just cut whichever side the hazard switch is on. One thing a lot of people were wondering, and that I never got answered in a video, this is a hazard switch harness. Yes, it reaches without any extensions, because I had some extra wiring thinking, well, I'm going to have to extend that harness. No, they have this harness pre-wired so it can be on either side. They didn't differentiate that between the JDM and US versions. So I'm going to get working on that. I don't have a saw. I'm going to try and just drill it out, and I'll have to see how well that works. By the simple use of a power drill, I managed to get basically that far in. So I'm hoping that'll be enough once I sand it down a little more and smooth it. But basically just by drilling about 10 holes, I was able to do that. So hopefully that'll work for the hazard switch. The process of wiring this, I did come across couple things I'd like to recommend. First of all, I wired my USB port up to here. This is a pretty convenient spot, just because you can keep an iPod up here, which is my plan. And then you just need a nice, short wire. I mean, you can control everything from the head unit, so you don't really need to worry about it. Or if you have one of those vent clip things for cell phones, just simply have another short cable, just do that there. Or if you want to mount a phone here on the dash, you can do that. Easy access to the USB port again. And then another thing that I decided I'd recommend is a really easy spot to put a Bluetooth mic. I'm going to actually mount it right here. I've had good luck with that spot in the past, and it's a very easy one. All you do is you take this little piece of trim off, and then, as you can see, the panel just pops out a little. You can run the wire, and it just goes right around. So I mean, just the easiest spot to mount it, right here. Don't put it on the actual steering wheel, but right here, that's a very good spot to mount it. Most install shops will run it like all the way up to here, which is not a bad spot. I was a little hesitant to use this spot on previous installs, but it's honestly worked great. I've never gotten complaints during phone calls, so So I mean, typically your steering wheel is, right now it's slightly turned just because I turned when I was parking and it's locked now. But typically your wheel is straight, so it's really, you have a pretty direct line, at it as long as your wheel is set up correctly. So I mean, you're talking virtually right into the mic most of the time. I mean, on my old Bluetooth module, I actually had it mounted right here, just because this had a mic, and then it had other Bluetooth buttons that it added, and even that worked great. And this is actually closer to your mouth, so yeah, I just thought I'd throw a couple pointers out there, a couple good spots to run wires if you do have added accessories that you're putting in. Okay, YouTube, so I'm about to hook up what I call the gauntlet harness. As you can see, I have the aux input now hooked up. There's a harness here with 3 outputs. The reason you're going to see more wires going into it is that it is actually pre-wired for steering wheel controls. So those extra wires are actually just for steering wheel controls. So eventually I might actually add the steering wheel controls to this and get it's like a ACW1 whatever steering wheel control module. But yeah, basically I'm down to this. This guy plugs into your remaining smaller harness right here. And you got the female here that plugs into this guy. Has quite a few wires going to it, and they're really bent up and stuff, so hopefully they're all in good shape. And then we've got the last 2 male connectors for me to bring that out. And then, as you can see, I found the pre-switch wire for my toggle switch here that I'm going to tuck in next to my drop stop. If any of you watch Shark Tank, best 20 bucks you will ever spend on your car. You'll never lose anything down your seats again with them. Best 20 bucks you'll ever spend. And you can easily tuck a toggle switch in with next to a drop stop, and out of sight, out of mind. So yeah, got my 6 channels of RCA. I plugged in the radio adapter. Hopefully this will work for the hazard switch. Over here I got the USB cord, the aux cord, which will retain that aux input, and then Bluetooth microphone, which as you can see is mounted right there now. As you can see, sitting back, doesn't restrict your dash view at all. And it's a very good location. Very easy to wire if you want to run it that way. Or you can depreciate these pillars here, because you can only pull them out a couple times and they're about shot. They're going to be loose as hell. As you can see, I've already ripped it out once for my radar detector. And that's where I learned that I never want to rip that thing out again, because they are not pleasant and you pretty much destroy them trying to rip them out. And just pulling this down, I mean, this thing's already been pulled down once for the radar detector, or not the radar detector, my auto start. So just take it from me, I recommend putting the mic right there. Okay, YouTube, so as you can see here, I have pretty much every harness here ready to go. USB, aux, Bluetooth mic, keeps falling down there. Over here we got antenna, 4 channels of RCA, and a 3rd channel. So all that. I'll have to clean that up a little. And then you've got the JDM HVAC controls here and your hazard switch. Finally, you can see I ran this green wire. I'm about to electric tape that, which when you're making these connections, you basically want to poke a hole in the thicker wire and then thread the thinner one through the hole, close the hole, and then wrap it. But basically this blue wire is pre-switch on this toggle switch here, and then from the toggle switch it goes to ground. I tested it, and on the NEX units this works for bypassing. If you get the warning screen that you need to release the parking brake and engage it again, just simply go like that and you're good to go. Hey YouTube, so this is just the hazard switch if you are going to do the US hazard switch. It's going to be basically sideways and not horribly flush. And basically the reasoning is it has brackets of two different, it has brackets of two different depths. And obviously, since everything is reversed, it's reversed, and you can't actually screw those two in. They don't fit. So you're betting this screw doesn't go in all the way. I'm not really sure why. I would think it should. But basically, that's all that's actually going to hold this toggle switch in place. I might try and like just kind of rig something. But yeah, it's not great. But it looks fine and I never use it, so that's kind of the logic I came. Okay YouTube, so one more thing I did was I basically just used some higher end electrical tape and wrapped around it like that, which really just kind of made it feel a lot more sturdy when using it. Obviously I don't know how well it's going to hold up in the winter, but there is one screw holding it in place, so this is more just to support the top of it. Basically just get as much electric tape touching surface area as you can, and hopefully it'll hold up. And worst case scenario, you basically push the hazard switch through and you could break the plastic in the process, but that's basically the best way of doing it, since those do not line up, and neither does that really. But that's basically what I went with. I mean, it's a hazard switch. It's not like it's your frickin' blinker that you're messing with. So, personal preference. If you order the JDM hazard switch, basically it'll just screw in perfectly and you won't have this problem, but considering you've probably already dropped about $700, that's basically a way to save $30. Hey YouTube, just thought I'd show you here. I did have to cut this out a little more because it does go a little higher than I anticipated. Besides that, I got all the wiring plugged in and I'm about ready to hopefully push this thing in and the hazard switch actually fit. But it was pretty close last time, so hopefully this last little bit of cutting opened up enough space for the hazard switch. Okay YouTube, here is the final installation of it. Everything back installed and functioning. So I thought I would go ahead and do some FAQ, frequently asked questions. Basically the biggest thing I'd like to point out, biggest question I'd like to answer first, how does it fit in the US version? Honestly, I would say that it fits better than I expected it to. You can see I've already messed around a little bit with the head unit. The first time, now it took a few tries. The first time I had it, basically right here was overlapping very badly, and up here there was a giant gap. So you're going to want to kind of adjust it as you're putting these trim pieces back on. And you might have to undo some screws, push it over to the side. And now I'd say the worst of all of it's probably right here. I just can't force it over. If I could force the lower part over, it would fit nearly flawlessly. Tiny little crack there. Tiny bit of overlap on that side. So overall, it's not a flawless fit, but when you're putting a Japanese part in the US, you can't expect a completely flawless. I did get the hazard switch functioning. This is probably the most I've ever pressed the hazard switch in my life. As far as that being flush, not really. That's kind of just a disaster. I had to do a lot more cutting. And then finally, I needed to make sure that the dash kit was flush enough for my head unit to do this. Without it catching anything. So it's, flawless as far as that goes. Okay, some frequently asked questions about the JDM HVAC controls. And these actually are very impressive. So people say if it's backward, because basically your defrosters are now over here, your auto and off are now over here. I'll put it in neutral so you can have a better look at it. First off, no, I did a test and it does go to the correct side. So say I crank the air conditioning on this side, crank the heat on this side. Let's see here. Okay, so over here I got very warm air coming. Over here, cooler air. Very cool. AC's not on, so it's not gonna be like that. But over here is definitely hotter. And over here, this is cool air. So the sides are correct. It does add a decimal point. Reason for that again being this is the JDM one, and it actually does detect that you are on imperial and not kilometers. I mean metric. So it actually does have the same range that the Fahrenheit ones had, except I think it goes to 85 now instead of 80. I'm not sure. I'll have to toy with it, but it actually does have a good range. But the decimal points are illuminated on this one, and I'm not entirely sure how you even set the Subaru Legacy to either imperial or metric. But it actually does detect it, because I was looking at people in New Zealand who were installing this dash kit, and they could actually get the decimal points, and then it only went up to like 40, 50 for them. So it actually does have the same range that the stock US one has. So yeah, first thing you want to do is basically test to make sure everything is working. Here, I'll show you the bypass I wired in. So okay, if my USB will switch over here. Okay, so right now it's basically, I believe it's not showing anything because it doesn't believe I'm in park.
How are you gonna show?
Yeah.
Look at this
See?
load of cars.
So you can't do anything right now.
One of the best days ever. Just about to go pick up Ricky.
You can see there, attention, viewing in the seat, and then turn it back on. As you can see, my underglow goes on and off with it. Hit OK. There you go. So that is one way. Yes, I have Trailer Park Boys on this. So if you need to do a bypass, just a couple wallpapers. I'm still getting used to the controls of this here. Okay, so let's see, I'll close my USB. I wish it would go back to the home. Go to radio. And already tested left, right, all that stuff, but that's basically all of that. I have a flash drive plugged in right now. I will have an iPod by default when I use this. And then when I'm traveling, I'm going to use Android Auto. I just like to use the iPod because I don't like to plug my phone in every time I get in the car. So I mean, honestly, Android Auto is nice for certain things, but honestly, I like to just have a car iPod that is just always in the car. It's always plugged in, ready to go, so I can just hop in my car and the iPod is all set. Basically, yeah, as you can see, it's all flush. Everything's great. I do still have to tune my subwoofer amplifier, but besides that, overall, this was definitely worth the money. I mean, this thing is fucking awesome. You know, this thing's very functional. When I click this, I can hear the relay click underneath my dash to turn the defroster on and off. Air conditioning, I can hear that engage. Yep, I can hear stuff engage when I do that. So overall, it does exactly what it needs to do. I will note that it's a little dimmer than the stock one, just the display. And if I turn my headlights on, it gets even dimmer. And then parking lights, I don't think those have any effect. Dimmer switch, I can go all, that's all the way up, and then I don't think my dimmer actually does anything unless the headlights are on. And as you can see, as I go dim, it does respond to dimming. Actually, I think the head unit does too, but that's beside the point. It's a little hard to tell if, oh yeah, these illuminate red. I don't know if you can see that. The buttons are all red, which is good, so I got red underglow. And I set the lights to red already. So, yep, the only complaint I really have is the fact that it's black. I'm probably gonna have to get a matte black wrap for this down here, just so it looks a little more logical. I mean, I could probably keep these guys gray, but I'll probably order up a pre-cut wrap for this little center console spot here, see if I can find somewhere that I can get that done. Biggest pain in the ass was probably the hazards, to be honest. Just making sure that it doesn't stick, and then cutting that chunk out of the plastic behind it using only a power drill, which was probably not the most efficient method, but nonetheless it worked. But yeah, besides that, everything works, all the stuff's plugged in. Now it's just a matter of tuning. So hope this was helpful. As usual, I do respond to all of my comments, so in the event that you do have a question about this, feel free to ask. Besides that, I hope this video was somewhat helpful. I didn't film the entire process, but the entire process took about 3 hours. So, yep, thanks for watching.